Well, welcome back to this study series titled Attitude Adjustment. We're looking at all of the blessed Beatitude statements of Jesus that are recorded in Matthew chapter 5. And in this series, we're taking each of these individual attitudes of Jesus and we're laying them aside, our very own attitudes, and then recognizing those areas in which we should strive to make adjustments. And if I'm really being honest with you, up until this point, this study hasn't really been that painful of a process for me personally. Now, I'm not bragging because, like we'll see, like I said, that's up until this point. Because today we tackle the seventh attitude in this study, the one that calls us to be peacemakers. Now, I don't know if you are like me, but I love a good fight. I just love a good fight. I don't know if that is because I grew up as a middle child having to fight for attention, or if it's something I picked up on the high school football field. Or maybe even if it was just all of those years that I spent in the Army that instilled this warrior spirit within me. But I just love a good fight. Nowadays, the world we live in, it's full of an entertainment-driven focus on fighting, on arguments, on disagreements, and drama of all kinds. We see this on TV shows and in movies. We see this in sporting events, in politics, and yes, even our news media. It seems as though I'm not the only one that finds excitement in conflict. However, as I study more and more about Jesus, I recognize something. Jesus was not a fighter. He didn't like for people around him to fight, and he wasn't a real big fan of arguments either. So maybe this tendency toward fighting is an attitude that I seriously need to begin adjusting. Perhaps it's something that you too might find necessary of addressing yourself. And it's okay if that is the case. But let's take a look at what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 9. Verse 9 says this, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." It's really sweet and simple, isn't it? He says, happy and blessed are those people who just seek to make peace with others. You see, seeking out opportunity to make peace wherever we are, it should be pretty simple then. But it isn't always simple, is it? Maybe, just maybe, you woke up this morning with stress and worry on your mind, all because you have conflict with others. Sometimes it's a real struggle just to find some sort of peace, especially when we find ourselves in conflict with others. And when we find ourselves in conflict with others, it can often seem almost impossible to find peace. But what Jesus says is if you just make the effort to go and to make peace, you're going to be happy. If you will just stop fighting and start loving, you're going to find peace within yourself. It goes back to that Greek word, makarios, that inward happiness. And yet a lot of times we think, yeah, but it sometimes just feels good to respond, to get revenge, to make sure that we are the ones that have the final say. And though this might feel good in the moment, that doesn't fix the problem. that doesn't resolve the issue. So we often begin struggling with God. We wonder, why do we have to try so hard when others do not? We ask, why is peacemaking so important? We might even say, can't I just love God and forget about these difficult people that I'm surrounded by? Well, let's take a look at another area of Scripture. Let's take a look at 1 John chapter 4, verses 20 and 21. It says this, if a man say, I love God, and hateth his brother, he is a liar. For he that loveth not his brother whom he hath seen, how can he love God whom he hath not seen? And this commandment have we from him, that he who loveth God love his brother also. This scripture isn't really that easy to hear sometimes, because in reality, it's really pretty easy to love God if we think about it. God always gives us love back. We think, well, God deserves my love. It's the loving other people part that is the hard part. We might say, if all I've got to do is love God, cool, sign me up. But God is saying, no, if you really want to love me, you've got to also love other people. You see, whether we want to recognize it or not, other people, they were created in God's own image too. Other people, they've been chosen by Him too. Those people that we might struggle to love are loved by God and are His children as well. So, we have to choose to love them just like He does if we want to be considered one of His own. And really at the heart of being a peacemaker is this idea of love. Jesus is saying, to be my follower, to be my disciple, it starts with love. To be a peacemaker, it starts with choosing love in all of those difficult situations. This is a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But if you find yourself in conflict, if you find yourself in drama, in tension, whether you are directly involved or not, as children of God, it is our responsibility to be the ones bold enough, loving enough, obedient enough to step in and to do our best to say, how do I take this conflicting situation and make it disappear rather than fueling it and pushing it forward? If we do this, if we look to Jesus as our example, we see that He too lived in a world of tension. He too lived in a world of conflict, of attack, with people who hated Him, who disagreed with Him, and yet He chose love. And yet He chose to make peace with all men. How can we do the same thing? It's not always going to be easy. It might even seem like an impossible task. But like Jesus, we have to choose love first. We have to choose a life of making peace that other people will then see, and then hopefully they too will follow. So, today, I pray that you will pursue making peace. I pray that you are encouraged to change or adjust these negative attitudes. I pray that from this day forward, the only struggle you choose will be the struggle against sin and darkness. And I pray that the only fight you choose is the good fight of faith. Until next time, be peacemakers and be blessed.